Welcome back to another round of Bases Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, an associate, an immediate family member, a distant relative, associate, enemy, anything in between. I appreciate them all. Now, these are the kind of weeks that I absolutely hate when it comes to this, because there is just way too much good quality action and it is spread across multiple platforms and they're all on the same day. So there is just not enough time to really dedicate and give any fight the true justice and analysis it deserves in terms of making a solid prediction on how you think it's going to go. That being said, I'm going to try to do my best to get through a couple. But for the most part, I guess I'm gonna have to maybe just touch on a few fights I'm really interested in watching, and then I guess just do the main events and try and sort of do it that way, because outside of that, this video will probably end up being about 45 minutes long, and I ain't got that kind of time, and neither do you. So if I just talk about a couple of fights that I'm actually very interested in watching this week, you know, without necessarily giving a big prediction. But the first one, Jared Big Baby Anderson against the gentleman George Arias. Now, I don't actually think a lot of people will know much about George Arias, but he's a Dominican fighter, Dominican Republic fighter. He's about 5'11", comes in the ring around about 218 to 220 a lot of the time. So pretty much the old weights that Mike Tyson used to weigh when he was boxing back in his prime in the late 80s. Now Arias is a pretty slick type fighter, to be totally honest. Very good footwork, quite quick for his height. And him facing Jared Big Baby Anderson, I'm very interested in that fight. Now Jared stopped all of his previous opponents, but this will definitely be the toughest test he's faced as a pro. And I'm not sure that he could get this one done within the distance. But yeah, that's one fight that I'm pretty looking forward to. Another fight which I'm very interested in actually is the Kenshiro Taraji fight against Anthony Osuega. Now that fight, to me, there's so many variables that to kind of work out how that fight is going to play out. The first part is obviously Taraji is obviously a light flyweight, so fighting at 108 pounds. Now Anthony is actually he normally campaigns at fly, so he will actually be going down to light fly for this opportunity, but he's a naturally much bigger guy than Kenshiro Taraji and hits a lot harder as well. So if he can make the weight, which I haven't seen the weigh-ins because unfortunately they're not being broadcast over here, but if you're in America you probably would have seen them, because I think it is being scheduled via ESPN, so you should be able to see it through there. But yeah, if he makes the weight comfortably, that is a very dangerous fight for Taraji. So I will be trying to find a stream for that in the morning, as it's not being shown in the UK. But trust me, that is a definite banana skin fight for Kenshiro Taraji. Tenshin Nasukawa, the kickboxing superstar from Japan, is making his boxing debut. So bit interested in that one, but I feel like that's gonna be more of a formality. I don't think they'll give him anyone particularly that they feel he's not going to be able to handle, and ultimately I think he's fighting Yuki Unisha, some name like that. I can't remember the full name of the guy, but yeah, I checked the record a little while ago and checked out some of his opponents. Capable operator, probably if you was to compare it to, I guess, bigger weights, he's probably on the scale of someone like a Richard Lartey, someone like that. Yeah, you know, on his day can maybe give you a little bit of trouble here and there, but ultimately, you know, not really. You shouldn't really be losing that. Israel Madrimov against Rafael Igbokwe. I'm interested in that one. It's going to be on the before the bell portion of the Matchroom card that's popping up tomorrow. Ray Ford and Jesse Magdaleno, I think that's also going to be a very, very good fight. Kiko Martinez is fighting Raya Abe in Japan on the same card as Kenshiro and Tenshin. So yeah, there's a lot of really, really good fights, and it's just unfortunate I'm not going to be able to really talk about all of them, but those are just like some of the ones that I'm really, really interested in. Also, another one which some people may not know about, which I'm very, very interested in, is Raul Garcia versus Robert Terry, which is actually taking place tonight in the UK, and I guess it would be evening time in the US. I'm not sure where it's being shown, but I'm going to see if I can find the stream for that one as well, because Raul Garcia, who is a super welterweight, pretty handy. Again, he's another Dominican Republic fighter, 12-0 at the moment with 10 KOs, and yeah, Robert Terry I think is 9-0 with 3 KOs, but he's a US guy. I think he's from New York, but that fight I'm interested in, just to see the trajectory of Raul Garcia, just to see kind of where he lands. But okay, that's enough of the fights I'm kind of looking forward to. Let me start to get into I'll do main event breakdowns of the main cards that are taking place for the next day or so. Right, so first up, Sebastian Fundora against Brian Mendoza. Now, I think Sebastian is already the WBC mandatory for 154. So I think this is more of a keep busy fight than, you know, an eliminator that he has to fight to maintain his spot. Okay, so Sebastian is what, 6'5", 6'6", 154 pounds. Like, you look at it and that shouldn't really make any sense, but he still seems to make the weight very comfortably. I would not be surprised if he does end up at sort of light heavyweight, you know, towards the end of his career, or, you know, super middle at very minimum, because, you know, to be 6'6" going into 154, your body's gonna fill out eventually. The minimum he's gonna go to is 168, but I could see him being a fairly competent light heavyweight. Now, Brian Mendoza's really tough. You know, I think what's his record? I think it's something like 23-2, but he's never been stopped. He's gritty, tough, rugged, always sort of comes to fight, smothers on the inside, doesn't give you a lot of time to sort of set things up, which kind of works towards Fundora's skill sets anyway, because he is very much a person, he does not use his height and reach to his advantage at any point. He loves to be mid-range to inside, you know, using hooks, small arching hooks as well. He doesn't keep people at the end of the jab, he doesn't keep them at the end of the right hand, even at the end of the uppercut. He's always sort of halfway in the center. He'll take one to give one, and that's just his style. Now, that plays into the hands of Brian Mendoza more than anything else, and Brian has a pretty good solid work rate. Now, for this fight, I feel as if the fact that Fundora won't necessarily use his attributes to their fullest advantage is going to be his detriment, and ultimately he's going to get caught in exchanges, and he's going to get caught in several scenarios in the ring that he could easily avoid, which will make a lot of the rounds much closer than they need to be. I can even see him losing a couple of the earlier rounds, especially while he's trying to find his sweet spot and his distance towards Brian. However, I do naturally see him being able to use his size and his height and maybe a weight advantage, which I'm sure he will have on the night over Brian, to be able to sort of lean, hold, grab a little bit of Brian, and obviously work on the inside as well. I can see it being a close fight, realistically, but ultimately I do think that Sebastian Fedora will win via points. Mendoza's tough. I don't think Fundora's got enough of a punch, especially from mid-range to inside, to really sort of take him out. And yeah, Brian, I think he's going to smother enough of Sebastian's work that he's not going to really be able to get full extension or full leverage on any shot that he really wants. It's going to be one of those hard, grueling fights for both, but I do think that Sebastian Fundora wins this one on points. So that is my pick, Sebastian Fundora on points. Next, we got Shakur Stevenson against Shuichiro Yoshino. Now, this fight is much better than a lot of people are going to give credit for. This is going to be one of those ones people are going to look and say, oh, well, I don't know this guy, so Shakur should just get him out of there and it should just be an easy night's work. No, that's where the people's ignorance is going to play a part in this particular one. Me, I don't know a huge amount, but I have seen enough of Shuichiro to tell you that, yeah, he is definitely a top 10 in the, you know, in the lightweight division. Also, shout out to Punch Perfect Boxing, because, you know, this is his bag. This is the kind of you know, the fighters that he sort of watches on a weekly basis and champions. So I did see, actually, he done a breakdown for this. I haven't watched it yet, or not all of it, I should say, because I didn't want it to influence my prediction. But if you want to know more about Yoshino and his track record, definitely go watch that. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. So ultimately, here's how I see this one going. Now, I think that going up to 135, Shakur, with his accuracy and the snap that he has in his shots, I feel like he may actually end up carrying more of his power up to 135 than he had at 130, or that he even had when he was at featherweight. However, because Yoshino is just a tough guy, like he's the kind of person that, to him, one punch can change the entire trajectory of the fight. Which basically means that Shakur's gonna have to stay switched on at all times, and especially if he wants to be on the front foot to try and see if he can force a stoppage. He's got to be very cognizant of what's coming at him at all times. If he gets hit with anything that makes him apprehensive, then he'll just go onto the back foot and fight more negatively and just win a very lopsided points decision, which, to be honest, he could do on the front or the back foot, but it just means it won't be a very fun fight to watch. So I guess the best scenario for us in this fight is that Yoshino doesn't land anything at all, because that's the only way this fight's going to end up being engaging and entertaining. If Yoshino gets any work off, like I said, Shakur's just going to box negatively. He's going to go on the back foot, and it's just going to be a bit of a snooze fest, and he's going to win wide. If he goes on the front foot, Yoshino is competent enough and rugged and tough enough that he probably won't get stopped. Although, you know, if he ends up walking onto something that is just accurate, that could put him in a position where maybe Shakur will unleash a flurry and the ref might step in and give him a TKO victory. But yeah, I don't see that one happening in this particular fight. I think his man strength is starting to maturate, and we will start to see it more. But I think Yoshino is gonna have enough in the tank that he basically does see all 12 rounds, with the only chance that not happening is if, like, maybe he gets cut, or he's taking like a real pasting, you know, faces horribly disfigured, there's no way back for him, and his corner decides to pull him out just to save him for another day. But yeah, I predict that Shakur Stevenson is going to win this one wide on points. It's a 12 rounder, I believe, so I'm thinking 119, 109 type scorecard. And it may just be one of the first couple where, you know, Yoshino maybe has a bit of success, but it's going to be extremely lopsided, and it's literally just about how Shakur wants to win this fight. But don't take that scorecard to mean that this is a bad fight by any stretch of the imagination. It's not. And Yoshino will definitely cause many other lightweights problems, and he will beat a couple of your favorite ones as well. So yeah, keep your eye on him, but this is going to be Shakur's coming out party at lightweight, most definitely. Okay, last but not least, we've got Jesse Bam Rodriguez against Christian Gonzalez for the vacant WBO flyweight championship. So how do I see this one going? Right, so last year Rodriguez went from light fly all the way up to super fly, won a title in his first conquest up there, defended it in his second, and in the process took out two of the so-called four kings, although that does that does take a little bit away from Kazuto Ioka, who obviously was a champion up there at the same time, but he since vacated the WBC belt up there and has now gone back to flyweight, so not light fly but down to fly, and he's fighting for this vacant title against Christian Gonzalez. Now, pros and cons. Okay, so the pro for this is that Jesse Rodriguez hasn't fought since September last year. Now, normally someone as young as him, as active as him, probably should have already been out by now, but he was saying that the 3 fights he had, bearing in mind that he had 3 fights in the space of, I think it was 7 months. Now, you know, back in the old days that was nothing, but in this day and age, you know, that's quite a turnaround. So he said his body was a little bit beat up. He didn't want to go again in December, which is what he was also scheduled to do, but he chose to go against that and ultimately take the time, just relax, let his body recover and recuperate. Now, if he wasn't having as long a training camps, then probably that wouldn't be an issue. But again, because he's so small, I guess you've got to make sure that you're always on top of your weight, and the way you stay on top of your weight is by constantly being in a state of flux in the training camp and watching what you're eating. And I'm assuming when you're down there, probably you want to be able to eat what you want and then have a 2 or 3 weeks extra just to burn off the excess before you're fighting. So he's had a lot of time to recover, but that also could mean that his timing is now maybe out of sync, you know, because when the last fight, September, we're in April now, so 7 coming up to 8 months. You know, it's a bit of a long time for someone like him who was in a natural rhythm to sort of be out of the ring. But his body should be nice and healed, nice and filled out. Having to drop those extra 3 pounds may have been like a little bit trickier, because obviously he was campaigning at a higher weight, and I guess he would have been maintaining his weight just a little bit higher. Whereas Christian Gonzalez is a natural flyweight and has been pretty much at flyweight the majority of his career, hasn't really looked to fluctuate much. Now, luckily it is only 3 pounds, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. I don't think Bam would be able to make light fly ever again, but you know, fly and super fly should be fine. Now, the issue with this main fight is the fact that Christian Gonzalez has been out of the ring for over a year at this point, and it's almost like he's been avoiding taking fights, knowing that, you know, Junto Nakatani was going to move up and that he would be next in line to fight, so kind of just been sitting on his ranking. That's never a good sign, especially for, you know, at these lower weights, because inactivity, everything just makes things a lot harder. You know, the bodies get old overnight in those lower divisions because of the way you have to make weight. So ultimately what I see kind of happening in this fight is Gonzalez is a bit jittery. Like, he's a person that you can, if you get up close enough to him, or you put a jab in his face, or you make a movement he doesn't like, he will react to it. He sometimes will panic to a certain degree. He's got overarching shots where he can wing in wide shots at you and throw his entire body weight behind it. So that's obviously something you've got to be extremely careful of, especially in the first sort of rounds. But if you can get him biting on those feints, then you can mentally fatigue him fairly comfortably, especially sort of towards the back end of a fight. He'll be switched on for like the first 6-7, and then after that, like, he might start leaving a lot more openings for you to exploit. So I think the first couple rounds you're gonna see Bam like basically trying to get into his rhythm, trying to understand the tells that Christian's gonna provide to him in the ring, just trying to work those out. Obviously trying to get into his pivots, get his movement, understand how the shots are going to be thrown back, while obviously staying engaged and staying competitive within the rounds. I reckon he'll probably still win some of the first couple, while he's assessing, like he's basically looking for different looks, seeing what punch work, what one doesn't, and just basically assessing Christian throughout those sort of first 2 to 3, maybe 4 rounds. But I think after that is when he's gonna now get into his bag, step on the gas, and just sort of start trying to break Christian down, primarily to the body. But he's going to be looking to pivot off his back foot, turn into shots, and land lead hooks, lead uppercuts as well, just similar to what he did back last year against both of the Four Kings, we'll say, basically. And realistically, I'm looking at, initially I was thinking that this one could go points, just because of obviously maybe the rust on particularly Bam. But going through it and having a look at some of his previous fights, and now looking at Christian and some of the stuff that he does, I actually do think that between rounds 5 to 8, Bam like really starts to get into his bag and puts on a clinic against Christian Gonzalez. And then I'm predicting around about the 10th to 11th round, him getting a stoppage. I think he would have dropped Christian maybe once or twice earlier on, sort of like around 6 or 7, and then just sort of carrying on the onslaught, and then eventually forcing the referee to stop it, or forcing Christian to fail to make a count of 10 within sort of round 10 to 11, somewhere along there. So the prediction is Jesse Van Rodriguez by KO. Again, there's so much good stuff on this week, so I apologize, I haven't been able to get through all of it. But if you watch the first part, you will see some of the fights that I'm really keen on. There's some that I refuse to do any predictions on, just because I just don't have enough knowledge, and there's way too much going on this week. But I hope that that's satisfactory. If there's any that you kind of want to know, put it in the comments down below, and I will, I'll give you a brief summary of how I think those ones are going to go as well. Outside of that, thank you very much for watching, hope you've enjoyed, and that is Basis Picks. Locked.